So, welcome to The Rest is Tech. This week, we're going to talk about outsourcing, insourcing for medium-sized businesses. Why should they? Why shouldn't they? You're going to edit it out anyway.
You never outsource a problem.
And that just leads to extra cost.
Oh, my ear went funny.
They're just being greedy, or
I thought it was a stroke of genius.
they have to get it right first time. So, welcome to The Rest is Tech. This week, we're going to talk about outsourcing, insourcing for medium-sized businesses. Why should they? Why shouldn't they?
Where do we want to start with that subject then?
Well, outsourcing. What are the different types of outsourcing? So I know of, there's outsourcing, there's offshoring, there's nearshoring, there's Britshoring. I'm sure there's lots of other shorings as well.
That's just different flavours of
Outsourcing,
right? I.e. giving some part of something you do to someone else to do on your behalf. And obviously technology is one of those areas that's always put right up there as one of the first things we're going to give to someone else, because we're not technology specialists, so we'll employ a technology specialist to do it. And then all manner of things go right and go wrong depending on how well or poorly you engage with a third party.
You have to get it right, don't you? I mean, you can't just outsource it to anyone. Anyone says they can do it, but experience tells us that some are better than others. And sometimes it's a cultural thing. Some parts of the world have different, they just want to please, so they say yes to everything when they don't really understand. So the example I always say is, in Europe, if you say to someone, do you understand? And they don't, they'll tell you. In other parts of the world, you say, do you want to understand? And they'll say yes, because they know that's the right answer, not that's not how they feel, but that's the right answer that you want to hear. Then you go back to them 2 weeks later and say, great, you've done all that. Oh, no, didn't know where to start. So I think we have to learn to ask different questions to make sure that people understand what we're saying, or we need to modify. We can't just be typically British and shout louder. We have to modify the way we have to understand the different cultures and modify the way we talk to them to elicit a productive relationship.
So let's row back from that though. Why would someone outsource, let's stick with technology service? I mean, normally it's for one of a couple of reasons I can think of. One is, we don't have the skills in-house and it's better to give it to someone who knows what they're doing, or there's a perception it's better to give them to someone who knows what they're doing. And the other driver that you often come across is cost. Someone who's an expert at it and perhaps doing it for multiple people can probably bring the cost of that service discipline down within the organisation.
Yeah, so take it in reverse order. So cost is, don't pay someone by the hour, pay someone by the result, if you like. So someone that's good at what they're doing, as you sort of point out or allude to, good at what they're doing, can probably do it in a fraction of the time as someone that has to bumble through it and isn't an expert. So an expert in doing something can do something quicker than someone that isn't. So that would be a cost saving, but that person probably charges more in the first place. So there's a balance, isn't there? And then the expertise. So medium-sized businesses, to have a fully functional IT team is an expensive business. There's lots of different technologies, lots of different skill sets you need, and most businesses can't afford that full team, or don't want to afford that full team, so outsource it to someone that can. And as I was talking about earlier, outsourcing can be traditionally to India or the Philippines are two big outsourcing destinations. Nearshoring Europe, a lot of Eastern European countries, good value for money, and being European.
There's a lot of companies in the UK that do it. The tech that we're talking about, I think there's a lot of companies in the UK that would do that.
There certainly are. Yeah, I was just trying to explain. Yeah, that absolutely. There's a lot of companies in the UK that can do that. It's just it comes down to a cost and quality. So I don't think you judge everything purely on cost. It's the service you get as well. And as you rightly say, that UK-based companies can do that. They know the language, they know the geographics of the place. So if you've got sites dotted all over the place, they know that, I don't know, Coventry isn't just round the corner from Land's End or something like that, which is quite important if you've got multi-sites and they're saying, oh, can you not just pop down to that site? No, it's not that easy, is it?
And what's the do's and, let's talk about the do's and don'ts of outsourcing. So one of the things I learned a long time ago was you never outsource a problem because it's a problem. You can outsource, the problem, but you fix it first, or at least fix it to the best of your ability, or worst case, you build a fix into the outsourcing contract. But what you can't do is say, I don't know anything about tech, so I'll give it to someone who does, and that can't be your starting point. That's a terrible starting point to have.
Indeed. No, I agree. I think a lot of people do outsource a problem, don't they? And that just leads to extra cost. I think you don't outsource a problem unless you've got really deep pockets, because they will just charge you lots of money, won't they? It's better to fix the problem so you can fix the cost, I suppose.
Yeah, but I think even if you can't fix the problem because you don't have, it might be catch-22, you don't have the skills in-house to do that, but there's a problem, you can still outsource that, but bake in a fix. You say, like, we're not just going to outsource, we know there's an issue here, we know you can bring benefit to you. I mean, at the end of the day, if you outsource a problem, you're just leaving money on the table.
Yes.
Right? You're basically giving money away because you haven't fixed that and you're relying on someone else to fix it. They will fix it and they will reduce their costs, which means that the cost of the service would be less. If you know that, even if you don't know how to achieve it, you can still negotiate that into the outsourcing contract. So you're buying back the service with the benefit baked in that can be derived.
Yes, absolutely. An example is websites. So people might have a website, but it's not SEO compliant, search engine optimized and things like that. So they just give it to someone else, but you need to fix all those sort of optimization issues, or the new company needs to fix them, and then you just say, well, that's a one-off price, isn't it, rather than an ongoing maintenance cost.
Yeah. Another lesson I learned a long time ago was, you never outsource your crown jewels. So if you've got something that's so fundamental to your business, even if it's part tech, and it's what gives you your uniqueness in the marketplace, you don't outsource it. You need to keep control of that. You need to keep hands-on. So what you might do, for example, is outsource the maintenance of the tech, the hardware and the what have you, but you might keep back the team that run, or people that run the software for you, because that's your unique offering in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So it's very, very valuable to you in the marketplace.
Gives you that competitive advantage, basically.
Yeah. So that's another, one to be careful of. It's all very well outsourcing tech, but you want it to be a commodity really that you're outsourcing, not something that's giving your business intrinsic value.
And following on from that, when you outsource things, you can't just sort of turn your back on it and think it's being done. You need regular reports to ensure that things are being met, that you agree on certain service levels, and you need to ensure that's being met. An obvious one, I talk to so many companies that they say, oh, we've got a company that does our security for us. It's like, so how many breaches have you had in the last whatever? Oh, I don't know. So you need, because the companies are still legally responsible for all that information, even though they've outsourced the support and maintenance of it, they're still responsible for the data, their data.
Yeah, it's back to that accountability, responsibility thing. You can outsource responsibility, but you can't get rid of the accountability. It's still on you.
Indeed. So a common one is just, well, show me your monthly status report from the company, and 9 times, maybe that's being too generous, 10 times out of 10 they never have a service report that tells them how many breaches have been defended or what's happened in the last month type thing.
So what's a good outsource look or feel like? How do you know once you've started, you've given away, let's stick with the example of tech support, you've given your tech support away, you've got someone else who's now providing your technology back to you. How do you know that you're getting value, they're doing it well, they're keeping on top of it, they're moving you forward, not just, things change over time. So you want that service to change over time as well to give you the best of what you need.
So two things I've already touched on reports. So you have regular, whether it's monthly, quarterly reports, meetings to ensure that the service is maintaining the levels that you want. But I think a good outsourcer will also be proactive. So there are many out there that won't do anything unless you ask them to, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what to ask them.
No, so you don't know what to ask them. So a good outsourcer will be proactive and say, well, you should be, you should be thinking about this, you should be upgrading this, whatever. Flip side of that, some outsourcers get a bit carried away with that. They see it as a bit of a cash cow, and they say, well, they suggest more things than maybe the company feel comfortable with. And again, I suppose that's where we would benefit, because we would sit on the company side and sort the wheat from the chaff and say, well, yeah, those are sensible things to be doing, and they're just being greedy, or it's not a good use of your money to spend money doing those things that they're suggesting.
It is a point though, isn't it? When you're, if you're a business owner and you're going to outsource any part of your business to anyone to do anything, there is a bit of nervousness about, well, I'm now dependent on that third party, even if it's something that's non-core to my business, and so I'm allowing them to do it because I recognise it's, that they're better at it or potentially better at it than I am. There's still that nervousness. I'm now reliant on someone that I wasn't relying before. Before it was me and my team. Now it's me, my team, and this other organisation.
Yeah, but that's where the regular reporting comes in. That gives them a level of security or something to fall back on, to assurance that things are progressing as they hope they would, because they're seeing the stats, they're seeing this many calls were logged. Also, just listening to staff. If people are complaining that IT's rubbish or whatever, then the supplier might not be doing what they said, or maybe you got the metrics that you're measuring them against wrong. But either way, listen to staff. What are they saying? If you don't hear anything, no news is good news in this case.
Yeah. I did see a good one once. I was in quite a large outsourcing deal, and our lawyers, it was a big deal, were advising something I'd never seen before, but I thought was a stroke of genius. And he wrote into the contract that we had to be a reference for them, for the outsource company, for all future bids they put into of similar scale operations. And obviously the theory was, well, if we have to be a reference for you, you're going to look after us, because you know that we're going to have our opportunity to comment on all your future business of a similar scale if you don't. So it wasn't a threat, it was just a nice way, I thought, quite a clever way of ensuring that there was a voice in the game moving forward.
Yes. I suppose I would question how that could be policed. How would you, as that company, know who the supplier is going out to?
It was difficult, and it was a larger scale business, so it might have been a bit easier. And the flip side as well is it's a commitment, isn't it? Yeah. Every time they've got to do an RFP or they're putting a proposal in, they've got to ask you to be a reference. You've got to provide that reference. So there are two sides to it, but I did think it was quite a clever way of saying, right, well, we're still going to have a say in your future business, therefore we can take a little bit more comfort that you're going to treat us well, because we've got this opportunity every time you're bidding for business. Yeah,
I think some companies also might be the first, say some suppliers might be trying to get into a type of industry. If you're you're the first one, you shouldn't be nervous about that, because they're going to treat you really well, because they need you to be a reference site for other clients.
I think referencing is quite interesting. So if an organisation is asking you to be a reference, that should be a positive sign. Or they say we will ask you to be a reference for us. You don't have to bake it into the contract necessarily, but if there's conversations around that, I think that's normally quite positive.
Yeah, I suppose we always ask our clients for references, so it's because we're confident on the service we provide, I suppose. Yeah, it's a good point to ponder. Coming back to your point, to answer that question, what's a good points to look for when you're outsourcing? Getting the contract right. Ideally, the contract goes in a drawer and gets dusty. Should never see the light of day.
You don't want to see it again, do you? There's a problem if you're building contracts out 2 weeks later.
Indeed, and well, not even, or even 2 years later, you want that contract just to sit there because the relationship is so good. But it does mean putting effort into getting the contract right in the first place so that everyone knows what they're committing to. Because sometimes contracts go bad because supplier thinks they're doing this and the customer thinks they're doing that, and the two aren't the same.
But that's what you mentioned, relationships. Excuse me. And I think that's critical in outsourcing. You know, you're at the end of the day, you're entering into an engagement with another organisation that's going to be for quite a while. You know, even if it's 2-3 year term and renewable, whatever, that's still quite a long time. And you know, it's the old adage: people do business with people they like. So you want to be partnering with an organisation that has similar values to yours. And again, I've sat in meetings before, you know, when we're doing beauty parades on outsourced service providers. And one to watch out for is sometimes you have sales teams and delivery teams, and never the twain shall meet. So during, you know, you're being, you know, you're getting all the chocolates and the coffees and all the niceties while you're dealing with the sales team. But you need to know that some of those people have got some skin in the game and are going to be supporting you for the next 2 years. There's no point you having a great relationship with the sales team and then you sign the deal and they all go away and you get another bunch of people in who you've never met before, who may be great or may not be, and they become the people you have to deal with. There's got to be some continuity.
No, when you were talking about, there's two things popped to mind. So it's the value. You also need to partner or outsource to companies of similar size. There's no good, or you can outsource to really big companies, but they're going to treat you as a medium-sized business. You're a small percentage of their profit. You need to have some sort of sway or some sort of impact. So outsourcing to similar size, medium-sized outsourced companies builds for a better relationship than just going to one of the big boys, which will happily take your money, but you'll be such a small part of their profit. You don't have a lot of
smaller
say.
ones. We've seen it before. I think you've seen this as well, where you partner with a newish company that's maybe broken away from a more established one, or has just recently come together, and you develop that codependency. So they're providing you a service because you're outsourcing, but actually they're reliant on you, back to the referencing, for a reference to actually help build the business that they're building.
No, you're totally right. Small companies as well, you might have a great relationship with maybe one person.
Yeah.
And they leave and it all goes wrong, doesn't it? So, or they're very reliant on that one person. So, yes, absolutely, too small as well. But there's about a similar size. That's why, big companies deal with big companies and whatever, they have more sway. Medium-sized companies should really think about dealing with medium-sized companies for a continuity and having more people in the team than just one person. Not putting all your eggs in one basket, as it were, or one person. And they have that skill, a variety of skill sets. A small company might be just very niche on certain things, which you probably need more support than just that.
There was a lovely phrase. I worked with a commercial guy once on an outsourcing deal, and he fought very hard not to call it a request for proposal. and the term he came up with, which we absolutely didn't go with in the end, but it encapsulated what we were trying to achieve, was a request for a mutually beneficial business opportunity. And that's a bit of a mouthful, but that's what you're after. You want something where you're getting a benefit outsourcing your service, but the company who's providing the service back to you is equally getting a business benefit of doing so. And if you can get that balance right, then you're going to have a contract you can shove in a drawer and hopefully not have to see it again, because you're entering into it in the right spirit, both parties.
Which reminds me of something else. So when we set up projects or project offices, everyone talks about change requests, which is can be seen as quite a bureaucratic process, whatever. So I've coined a phrase that we use time and again. So we don't have a change request form, we have an I would like form, which makes it more open to people. It doesn't, I would like that. Make it quite simple, just engage them. Found that having a change process also helps people move forward. That you can have a lot of stagnation with any change you want to make because they think they have to get it right first time. As soon as you put a change process in, they think, oh, okay, well, this is right now, but I know that I can request a change later on, and it's a really simple process. So, and it just helps people overcome that or overcome that inertia and start the ball rolling, I suppose.
And the reality is, as you say, you can't get all these things right first time that last forever. No. There's going to be change of some description, and you have to have a mechanism for handling that.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. But yes, you want to make it as easy on people as possible.
I just like the I would like form. I came up with it several companies ago and keep using it again.
If it works, why not?
Yeah, it makes it. And it's the same form, but it's just I would like.
And so there's a flip side to outsourcing as well, right? Which is bringing outsourced services back in house. Are we there yet? Are we at that part of the conversation?
Yeah,
We've got more on outsourcing.
Yeah, probably is. But no, we can circle back, can't we? So, yeah, insourcing. Why would you insource? You've already touched on you don't want to outsource your crown jewels or things that give you a competitive advantage. When would you bring things back in-house? Well, I think when you grow to a certain size where you can have your own team, therefore you have more control, and therefore it can be more cost effective, because if you're outsourcing vast amounts of skills, it can be quite expensive, and you can do that cheaper.
I've only ever seen it done in two different scenarios. One is something's gone horribly wrong with the outsourcing, and actually it's so wrong that the organisation wants to bring it back in-house to fix it. Whether it stays in-house long-term or not is a different issue, but to begin with, it's no, we need to get back control of this. This is damaging our business, and we need to somehow get control of it. But that tends to be larger organisations rather than smaller organisations. And the other time I've seen it is when the underlying business model changes. So there's now more of a dependency on some element of technology than there was in the past, and it's no longer that commodity thing. It's something that the business believes it needs to have more control of, because it wants to invest or create some of its crown jewels out of that technology. And the leaders of the organisation say, I don't want to leave this to someone else to do. I want more control of it. So I want to bring that service back because I want to do something different with it, which I believe is more integral to our business.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of customers that do that. So they've had their initial software concept has been developed by an outsourced company. Now they want to bring it in-house to possibly drive the change of pace quicker, to, as you say, to have more control over that change, and possibly drive more quality, or have a better product at the end of it. There's probably things now that you wouldn't ever bring in-house. Hardware, supporting servers. People don't really have servers anymore because they normally have software as a service in the cloud or cloud. So those sort of things probably don't come in-house. But software development, you might bring in-house your first line support because they know the business, they know the people to talk to individually. Well, outsourcing first line was also it's debatable, but the benefits of bringing it in-house would be having people that know people within the business can talk on a more friendly business language. That first line support.
So first, let's just be clear. So first, second, third line support. Right. First line support is basically the people who answer the phones when you've got a problem. Those are the first people, with clues in the title, the first people you speak to when you've got, my computer's not working, so
yes.
the service isn't available.
I say that if they can't fix a problem in 15 minutes, it goes on to someone else. So they should be able to not just take the call, but some basic repetitive stuff. Can they fix the problem and get people moving on without passing them on to someone else in a 15-minute window?
Okay. And second line, how would we define second? Because it's important to understand this, because people might choose to outsource only first line, first and second,
Indeed.
Different combinations.
So second line is those people that are more techie, more technical, are doing things that take longer than 15 minutes, things that take a certain more skill, but they are known issues, known resolutions that they just...
But they're generally more complex to deal with.
Yes, but that they're known. They're not necessarily delving into the unknown, which I think goes to third line support.
Yeah, so third line support, just to be clear, third line support is normally the vendor. So if you've got an issue with Outlook, for example, third line support is usually Microsoft themselves.
Yes, yeah. Some companies might have third line support that might do problem identification as well, though. Problem identification meaning we keep getting this issue, well, this is the fix, whatever it is, we apply this, but what's the root cause of that? How do we fix that so we don't keep getting those many issues?
You've probably got to be larger to have that level of third line support. So third line support traditionally is the actual provider of the software. And that example I gave, Microsoft, but it could be others as well.
Yeah, whoever provides your software or whatever. Yeah. So they're the different levels of support. All of them could be outsourced. Well, third line is probably always outsourced unless you're a massive company. Second line, more often than not. A lot of companies outsource first line because although it's really simple, it's also a pain to have someone on the end of the phone.
There's also that, the amount of time you want support for. This is another thing that you get in outsourcing is, what hours do you want covered? Is it the normal business hours, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? Invariably in mid-sized to larger organisations, you've also got we have executives who work the weekends and don't work, just 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And if they're stuck on 8 p.m. on a Thursday, they still need support. And if you're trying to provide that first line support yourself, to cover all those hours, there's an immense cost because you've literally got to have 3 or 4 shifts to do it.
It's quite. I've just been writing this morning an incident and contract for a client, and just defining that. Keep it within the core business hours, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5, which dramatically reduces the support costs because your suppliers aren't having to cover or pay someone to be on call out of hours and things like that. And then you say execs might work at weekends, but also most of them are reasonable enough to realise that I don't have any support and I have to wait until Monday morning if things go wrong.
Most of them. I think we both know not all of them, though.
Well, that's why I carefully said most and not all. But yes, most of them are. But if they want to put their hands in the pockets and they want to pay for 24-hour support, then...
I think you segment it, don't you? And normally when people see the cost of that versus the cost of sitting to more usual business hours, then that becomes a deciding factor.
Definitely. You just present them with both costs, and they normally then think, yeah, okay, I can wait till Monday morning. Yeah. So we were talking about insourcing though, weren't we? So why would you insource? We've talked about having more control, and so we've got companies that want to now push on the development of their products that are unique to them, and bringing it in-house. They've got to a size where it's not just developing, it's supporting as well. So when you get a lot of companies we talk to, they think about, oh, we just need to develop this, and they forget about, yeah, but you've also got to, if you're providing something to your clients, you've got to support it as well, and the support costs for software can be quite expensive if you don't have a quality product, but you just need to think about constantly evolving it and constantly moving it on.
So in both directions, there's a lot of hidden things, or perhaps not hidden, but less obvious things that need to be thought about. And you do need someone who's got some knowledge and experience to help make those decisions, or help you make those decisions. You're not necessarily going to have that skill set in-house.
I would guess IT-wise, you'll probably ever have that skill set in-house to know what to write into contracts. Another good one, if you're outsourcing, what happens at end of contract, end of life of the contract. So a lot of companies will sign up and not think about, well, we're going to outsource all our software, we're going to buy this bit of software or whatever and outsource to that. Well, what happens at the end of the contract? Some contracts don't have a termination clause in it, so this is what is expected of the supplier, not just the notice period, but we will provide information in this format so that it can be incorporated into the next system. We'll provide this level of support, whatever. And like I say, talking about all those things at the very beginning, when you are friendly, when they are trying to sign up you to be a customer, get all those things sorted out so that if things do go wrong, no one's going to be in a mood to compromise at that point, but they are at the very beginning. So having a solid contract sorted out is important.
Yeah, again, the same lawyer that I referred to earlier, his way of phrasing that was, we're entering into a marriage, but we're writing the contract for the divorce.
Yes.
Which is not a very positive way, seemingly to look at it, but it's a very sensible way of looking at it. If we agree all those things now, what divorce looks like, hopefully we can put it in the drawer, forget about it, and have a happy marriage. But if we don't, then the breakup becomes particularly difficult. You don't know whether you're getting your data back. You don't know how much notice you've got to give. You could get left, really exposed if you don't consider those things from the outset. And
suppliers are people as well. I've seen many cases where they get very upset when you tell them that you're leaving, and it's like, and they just make life difficult. No matter how well you get on with them, the moment you say that you're thinking of leaving, they just become incredibly obstructive, which I find is very short-sighted, because you might come back to them in the future. You might recommend them to someone else. You've just outgrown them, but someone else might be suitable for them. But if they have that sort of attitude, and I won't name names, but I'm dealing with some at the moment, and it's just can't believe they have that sort of attitude to.
Yeah, but they do, and you need to go into these things with those exit criteria set, and then in the unlikely event or the unfortunate event that you do have to bring that contract back out and put it on the table, then at least those things are covered.
Yeah, and it might not even get to the exit. You talked about something earlier that we didn't fully explore. The sales team come in, they sell you a solution, and then sometimes they hand over to the operations team. And I've seen it so many times where the operations team say, "Oh, we can't do that," but it's written here in the contract.
Yeah,
it says you can, and that's just. The sales team are very much focused on you signing that bit of paper so they get their commission, And I'm sure there are some that say they're more considerate than that. But at the end of the day, their involvement stops as soon as you sign and hands over to someone else. So important that you get those. More from the supplier side, in my opinion, the suppliers need to get their operations team involved. You feel the effects of it as the customer, but really it's their job to get them.
Yeah, and we have to say that's not how everyone operates. That's just some people delineate between operations and sales, and some people it's more of a together approach. But you have to be aware, of whether you're dealing with just a sales team, and then you can, you have the knowledge then and experience to say, well, let's pull the operations team in as well. We don't just want to deal with the sales team.
Thank you for giving me that legal caveat there. But, unfortunately, there are quite a few companies like that. As you say, not all of them.
Yeah,
there are. And so, again, that's where the rest is tech come in, because we know the questions to ask. We know enough about a little bit about everything to ask the relevant questions. We don't necessarily know all the answers, but we know all the right questions to ask to challenge and make sure that our clients get the best possible outcome, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the way I would sum it up is I was summoned to a CEO's office once when we'd done an outsourcing deal. And the question he asked me was, how good is this contract? My response was, I can't tell you how good the contract is. No good if it comes out of that drawer and is on the table at any, like you said, at any point. Then it's not a good contract. So, but in the event it does come out, everything's covered. That's what I can tell you. Whether it's a good contract or not is not the point. Whether it's a good deal to be signing is not the point. But we've got all the bases covered in the event it goes wrong. That's as good as it can ever be. Because with the best will in the world, as you said, you could be dealing with people throughout the romance period, the sales process, that aren't the people that you end up dealing with, and things can go awry for a variety of reasons.
That reminds me of another story I have. I was working for a very large retailer, and we were doing some head office work, and we had to do it over the weekend when obviously the office staff weren't in the... And on the Monday morning I was called in to the CEO, and he just said, I want to thank you. He said, no one has complained about what's going on. So he was intelligent enough or aware enough that people would have been at him if things hadn't gone well, and he was aware that silence was great. It meant there weren't any problems and it just happened. That's the magic happened, and didn't need to worry about it.
It's a rare CEO that hears silence, though, isn't it?
It is. It just shows how good we are at our job, though, doesn't
it? Absolutely.
Yeah. So don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on future episodes you'd like to see, or even what you've heard today.